Hello and welcome to Awesome Premier League Match Day 36. We are back to analyze this interesting fight for the Champions League with Mr. Tom Rennie. Hello, Tom. It couldn't be for Arsenal. No Champions League again.
Yeah, it was a shame. It was a shame. I think that they played quite well. If they scored in the opening 10-minute, like salvo, I think they may well have gone on to win the game with their defensive prowess. But when you don't score when you're on top, you don't win games of football, which is why it's crucial to score in the opening 10, opening 15 if you're an Arsenal, Villa sort of team. So commiserations to Arsenal. I thought they did bloody well to get to the semi-finals, but I think this is Paris Saint-Germain's year, weirdly.
Hopefully it's not, and we have Inter winning the Champions League. But who knows? Yeah, who knows? Well, we might see another 3 English teams in European finals. We'll know today, Thursday, but now it's time to talk about the Premier League. So, guys, and to make some money, as 𝗲𝗲𝗿 is telling us. So, guys, stay with us. You have here the like and the subscribe button. And now let's go on with the show. Well, Tom, hopefully today you can catch some breath in between games, because I'm telling you, it's going to be tough this match day. The games we have on Saturday, I think if you have other plans to do, you can do it, actually.
No.
Because
watch the Premier League. Win some money. That's what you should be doing.
Watch Ipswich Brentford. But before, let's go with Fulham Everton. Nothing on stake here, but Tom is going to tell you how to make money out of this game. They lost to Aston Villa, Fulham. So it's 3 defeats in the last 4 games. Everton couldn't even beat Ipswich after 2 defeats. So it's 1 win in the last 10. So I guess the draw is actually good in this game, Tom.
Potentially. I mean, I would refute the claim there's nothing to play for. Certainly for Everton, nothing to play for. But for Fulham, this is a huge week. This is a game where, look, that race for 8th is still wide open. And they have fallen from 8th to 11th in the last couple of weeks where results have not gone their way. But 8th is more than likely going to get you Conference League football. And for Bournemouth, for Brentford, for Brighton, and for Fulham, that would be amazing. That would be enormous. That would be so gratifying for all of those clubs who have spent a lot of the last, let's say, 2 decades not in the Premier League or struggling to stay in the Premier League. It's been near 20 years since Fulham's great run to the Europa League final where they lost to Atleti all those years ago. So it's a huge chance for these clubs. And the trouble is with Fulham is whenever this season the chance has been upon them to do something great, they have fluffed it. So many times this season, last week against Villa, real tough assignment, don't get me wrong, but they had to get something, lost the game. Same at home against Chelsea, same at Bournemouth. But then when you think, I discount Fulham, forget Fulham now, they're not in the mix, they beat Liverpool. So they're a tough team to bet on. I think they've got some really good players, but I do think some have fallen off in the second half of the season. People like Anthony Robinson being linked with Liverpool in the first half of the campaign. I think the second half of the campaign form has not been anywhere near good enough. Rodrigo Muniz is out injured, and Raul Jimenez, who's been tremendous this season with 10 Premier League goals, just dropped off a little bit. 𝐿𝐿𝐴, maybe the only really consistent player that Fulham have had all season. So I think it's a massive game for them. That's my only concern when I'm going to tip them to win in a minute, that when the big game comes around, Fulham find ways to lose. But 7 home victories this season, 5 draws, 5 defeats is not the worst record of any team in the competition. And so every chance in this game. For Everton, they had that wonderful flush when David Moyes first came in, because everyone had got bored of the sound of Sean Dyche's voice and nothing was happening for him. And the club just needed a lift. And he gave it to them. He gave them the Dyche organisation, but he did add a bit more of attacking know-how. Look, it's not the most engaging, enthralling, ideological style of football that David Moyes plays, but he is a better attacking coach than Sean Dyche. And we have seen that in these games. But every Everton game tends to be 1-1, 1-0, either way, tight draw and not many goals in it. And it's dried up. It's 1 victory in the last 5. It's a whole host of draws this season for Everton. Away from home, 6 draws, 7 defeats and 4 victories. But home and away, they've drawn 15 matches this campaign. Incredible numbers of games where no one has got over the line. And I think that this summer's going to be really interesting. I would imagine 𝐷𝗵𝗵𝗀 will go. They'll replace Beto. There's a few other players I think they'd like to move on, but there's not going to be a lot of money before the stadium moves, so that's going to be quite interesting. In terms of this game, I think you're absolutely right to look at the draw, but I just feel like Fulham, even at 1.89, I do feel like Fulham have got a lot more riding on this than Everton do. So draw, 3.75, very tasty, but for me, take Fulham to win at 1.89, Fulham to win a tight game. To win to 0 was 3, which I really liked. Fulham to win 1-0, 2-0, or 3-0. You can forget 3-0, but you get 1 and 2 together. That comes in at 3.5. I'd also be looking at this game to be under 3.5 goals. So 1-0, 2-0, 2-1, no more than that. Tight, maybe unwatchable, but I will just shade for Fulham.
Both things to score for Tony, and we have Harry. Very happy to see PSG in the final. I'm very happy to see Inter in the final, so we can shake hands, Harry. Next game is Ipswich, Brentford. Ipswich, I mean, this is also irrelevant, or perhaps not for Brentford trying to get into the 8th spot, and they are in a great run, 3 consecutive wins, 4-3 to Man United, before that Forest or Brighton, so good teams. Ipswich got a draw against Everton, as you just mentioned, and the bookies give Brentford really low odds. Tom, it's only 1.6.
Well, you can understand why. Ipswich have won 1 home game this season. They're already relegated. I think there was a commendable nature to their performance against Everton last week, Ipswich, as it was against Chelsea a few weeks ago. But away from home, they've done actually reasonably well in the Premier League this season. Not great, but reasonably well. A couple of wins, few draws, 10 points odd, that's fine. The home form is what has got them relegated. 4-0 thrashing against Arsenal, the 2-1 loss against Wolves, losing against Southampton. I don't know why. Up into Portman Road. It's not the most vociferous and scary stadium in the country, but it's certainly not go there for an easy win. So I've been really surprised by that. And I think you've got to blame the manager and the way they've been set up to play in these home games. They have not tried to rough up the opposition, nick a goal like Luton did last season. I know Luton went down and down again, but there was a few games at home where they really got under your skin and you thought, yeah, okay, you can see how teams might come here on a couple of days in the season and have a bad day. Ipswich have tried to play football in the Premier League with players not good enough to play in the Premier League. And beyond a couple of players, 𝗛𝗏𝗏, maybe Hutchinson, I don't see anyone being back in the Premier League next season, and that is their issue. But commendable in that they're going to go down with the Premier League parachuting payments, and I expect them to win the Championship next year. We'll see how that goes. But you mentioned it. The story is Brentford here. They're in that mix. I won't keep doing the story over and over again, but the top 4, the 4 clubs trying to battle for 8th is a really good story. They all love to be in Europe, and Brentford maybe are the form team of that group right now. Yes, it was a weakened Man United last week, but the result came in as we predicted. Yes, the win at Forest maybe came at Forest's nadir of the season, but what an impressive victory that was. Again, a result we predicted. And the win over Brighton with both teams scoring and Brentford winning. Again, a result we predicted well. So I'm feeling good about Brentford right now. I'm getting Brentford right. Unbeaten in 5, 3 wins in a row. You've got to go Brentford again. Straight up to win is your first tip at 1.67. Not great odds, so what can we bring you? Brentford minus 1.5 goals for them brings you at 2.5. Again, we're getting there with an Asian handicap with Brentford. I think they'll score at least 2 goals in this game. 2 against Forest, 4 against Brighton, 4 against Man United, scoring lots of goals right now. You can also get it at minus 3.5. Brings you in at 5. It's quite generous, that. But I wouldn't be surprised if Brentford scored 4 goals in this game without reply. So really look at the Asian handicap market here. Go as bold as you're willing to go. I think minus 1.5 will be a winner, almost a definite winner, as close as we can be definite. But I wouldn't be surprised if they spanked Ipswich here. And as ever with Brentford, pick Brian Mbeumo, who is absolutely brilliant to score, and Brentford to win. And Mbeumo, 18 goals in the Premier League this season. One of the most under-talked about players and under-talked about stories. He is in the Golden Boot mix. He won't win it, but he'll be in the top 4, top 5 players in the Premier League for goals this season. What a player that Brentford have got.
And this is your Brentford specialist, talking here. So pay attention, guys. 𝐬𝐵 3-1 for Brentford. 𝗵𝗵 Brentford to win, but he wouldn't mix it with other markets. Let's go to the next one. Perhaps also a good one for Asian handicap. Of course, Southampton against Man City. Well, for Southampton, it's 2 points in the last 12 games. They have like all the negative records ever, so it's better not to talk much about them. And for Man City, it looks like they are going to nail the Champions League spot right now, 3 points away from Forest. They are in a good run, 4 consecutive wins. And next week, Tom, we have the FA Cup final against Crystal Palace.
Yeah, we do. Look, briefly on Southampton, I saw a quote from the manager, Simon Rusk, who is the caretaker for the second time this season. And he said, we're not wishing away games in the Premier League. And I thought, you absolutely are. Like, they need this season to be done and finished and forgotten. And I think they will do whatever they can to forget everything that happened here, because it truly has been the most disastrous season I can remember. Like, I wasn't working in the Premier League when the Derby season happened. In the 10 years, 12 years that I've covered the division, this is the worst season by any team. And look, have they looked better than Leicester in the last few weeks? Yeah, kind of. Last week they play Leicester. What happens? They lose. They just do not have the quality, the organisation, the desire, the goal scorers, the defenders, any of it. They've got nothing. And they'll be keen to get this over as soon as possible. The home form this season has been diabolical. And this really is just such a horrible game. It's just such a horrible game for them, because maybe if it came in August, September, October, you can just wipe your mouth and move on. This could be a cricket score. Like, this could be any score that Man City want it to be. And in terms of Man City, the point you made is really interesting. They're on this great run. It's 5 or more wins in a row, maybe 6 in the league. Palace, Everton, Villa, Forest and Wolves had the last 5 in front of me. Did they play particularly well in many of them? No, not really. I think Forest, yes, and Palace, yes. The others, bit of a wobble. Villa maybe could have lost, weren't amazing against Wolves, but like, they're winning games again. And they do it every year. The only trouble is this year, they fell so far back in their slump over December and January, they couldn't recover it. If this season went on for 3 more months, I think they'd win the league, because they've found their way out of it. And they've done it through getting something last week from Kevin De Bruyne, from changing formation, from bringing in youthful exuberance like O'Reilly, from having a more settled defense with the amount of players that have been out this season. They have found solutions to problems, and they're getting top performances from new players, specifically Omar Marmoush, who's been outstanding. And so all the signs are good for City. There's some talk Rodri might be able to at least be on the bench for the last week of the season, which would be a massive fillip for the club just to see him again. And then going into next season, of course, they have one of the best players in the world coming into their midfield. So it ain't too bad. So look, on this game, there isn't much you can do but look at the Asian handicap market. Obviously, Man City win. If you feel not particularly brave, minus 1.5 is 1.53. That's probably like a safe bet, frankly, this weekend. First decent handicap is minus 3.5 at 4.33. So that's 4-0 or more. City are going to score at least 3 goals in this game. On the average of goals conceded for Southampton and scored for City, they're going to. The only question is desire. And there's something about City right now, looking back at the Palace game specifically, that tells me they do want to get some crushing and impressive victories. So I wouldn't be surprised if 4, maybe 5-0.
Well, 4-1 for Constantinos, Man City 2-0, and Man City to win and over 2.5 goals for 𝐬𝐵 also in the individual market. Marmoush to score +2. In this case, Constantinos Isterinas could be a good option. And I know you are thrilled about talking about Wolves. Wolves Brighton is the next game. Brighton also fighting for this 8th spot, and Wolves in a great run. They lost to City only 1-0, yes, but before that, 6 consecutive wins. Brighton is only 1 win in the last 7 Premier League games.
Yeah, tough one this. And that win over West Ham was like a last-ditch wonder goal that got them over the line. So their overall form is still pretty concerning, I think, for Brighton. Look, with Wolves, firstly, the job that Vitor Pereira has done has been really good, but I do think the fixtures have been incredibly kind to Wolves at a time where lots of teams had given up. To face Ipswich Town, West Ham United, Tottenham Hotspur, Manchester United, and Leicester City in this run. Like, the fixtures could not have landed better in the lap of Wolverhampton Wanderers. That's not to say they were guaranteed to win those without good organisation, individual improvement, and a great feel around the club created by Vitor Pereira. That's all been very impressive. But also, it wasn't like a run of Newcastle, Aston Villa, Man City, whatever, before last weekend to try and salvage the season. So, impressive. I think they have now moulded a really good lower mid-table team from a potential relegation team. But let's not go too far about Wolverhampton Wanderers, which is the reason I'm a little bit concerned about this game, because Brighton have a lot to play for right now. I thought they were great at points against Newcastle last week, certainly in the first half. I thought the first half an hour against West Ham, they were really good before West Ham became the better team for the rest of that match. Some really good moments in the game against Leicester as well, though there were some defensive lapses. Oh, it's tricky. It's really tricky with Brighton, because I think that without 𝐬𝐿 up front, who remains suspended, they lose that physical presence. They've got no Jorginho Rutter as well. Without those two, Danny Welbeck doesn't quite look his best. And we saw some good stuff from Minte last week. But without Mitoma on the other side, who's a doubt for this game, they just don't quite have the depth. Of course, they haven't got the depth. Brighton aren't designed to have the depth. And you can keep bringing in miscellaneous players. There was a guy last week who had a chance for them who I'd never seen before. 𝐷iego Gomes, I think. Like, who on earth is that? How are they finding someone called 𝐷iego Gomes at some point in May who I'd never seen before? Like, they seem to do this all the time. It was like last season when Simon Adingra turned up out of nowhere. Like, they have this depth of player you don't quite know. And it's an incredible thing they do there. But I think it's costing them in this run. You need experience, you need quality, you need players who know how to get you over the line in a run like this, and they don't have it. And it's costing them. So I think Wolves will get back to winning ways here. I think their recent run and recent form against kind of middling teams has been impressive. So take them to win at 2.85, considering the run they've been on. That is not bad at all. I think there'll be both teams to score, because that basically happens with every single Brighton game. Last 5, 1-1, 3-2, 4-2, 2-2, 2-1. So Wolves and both teams to score at 5 is really juicy. Love that bet. Nice little group of 2-1, 3-1, 4-1 to Wolves at 6.5. Don't discount the draw as well, which is pretty decent odds as ever. But I think Wolves win and both teams score in this game. And it could be quite exciting.
Well, draw for Levy and Brighton to win. For Konstantinos, the streak for Wolves is over. And the last game we have on Saturday is Bournemouth, Aston Villa. This is much more interesting, in my opinion, with Aston Villa fighting, still challenging for the Champions League spots. Now 3 points short. From Chelsea, they beat Fulham, and they have Spurs and Man United next, and they are awful in the Premier League, so it's not bad schedule actually for Aston Villa. But first they have to win in Bournemouth, and they are undefeated in the last 5, and they are coming from a great win at the Emirates.
I'm really trying to draw you into the battle for 8th. I'm trying my best, okay? I feel like you're not going for it. You're not going for it. I'm trying.
I just did a video with Álvaro Romeo saying how uninteresting is the race for the conference in La Liga. So, how sad, actually.
Yeah,
perhaps
cheer up, Alvaro.
Hey?
Come back to the Premier League, Alvaro. It's much better over here. The fight for the Conference League is amazing.
We are seeing Osasuna, Rayo Vallecano, Mallorca fighting.
What a race. What a race. Let's go Mallorca. I've always said it. I've always liked Mallorca. But it's interesting here in both conference, which I think is really interesting. And if the Premier League team goes in that, they can win that, which makes it really interesting. But also Europa League is interesting. The battle to avoid it, if you like, between Villa and Forest. And also that Champions League battle as well. So look, let's start with Bournemouth. I think that their recent form has been really impressive, tough to beat, struggling to get over the line in games. They did last week against Arsenal, but of course failed against Man United. The game against Crystal Palace was absolutely appalling. Led against West Ham and drew in that match. And West Ham, we'll get to them later, are just the biggest mess of any team in the league this season, and are desperate for this season to be over and do a full reset with the manager. So like to have not won that game was a huge disappointment to them, having led. Evan Nilsson, what a striker. Absolutely fantastic. What a debut season in the Premier League he has had. Led the line brilliantly last week. Proper strikers getting there at the back post goal last week. I wonder how long he stays at Bournemouth for. 𝐿𝐨𝐴𝐳𝐷 came on last week, a rare game where he didn't start. No one expected it. And he came on and changed the game last week with his long throw and his dynamic running against Arsenal. So I expect him to come back into the starting 11 here. Offensively, great. Defensively, little wobbles at time, but still got very good players in 𝗵𝗵𝗍𝗍 and Howson. And I think 𝗍𝐿𝐴 very poor last week. I wonder how much conversation about his future has affected his form. So, look, huge game for them. I think Justin Kluivert has kind of not trailed off. That might be too strong, but his form hasn't been great in the last few weeks. Without that, I think they've lost that extra sparkle that they had with him in his top form. That could potentially prove costly. So it's a huge game for Bournemouth, this one. Absolutely huge game. And their sort of unbeaten streak has been pretty impressive in recent weeks. I'm concerned about their home form overall. 6 defeats in the Premier League this season, 4 draws. They haven't won enough home games. That's why they're in the Conference League conversation and not the Europa League conversation. So could go either way with them. In terms of Aston Villa, really good performance against Fulham last week. Really important victory and important to bounce back from what had been a terrible fortnight for them. Elimination by Paris Saint-Germain. Yes, the win against Newcastle was a good bounce back, but the performance and loss against Man City were great because they played well and lost the game. And the Palace defeat in the FA Cup semi-final was the most shockingly bad performance of any team I've seen this season. And I mean that because the standards of Villa are so high and they slipped so low below them. So when they had disappointments, they do bounce back. And I kind of expect them to do it again. I think that the injuries by Marcus Rashford have cleared up really well. I think they have better players than Bournemouth. They've got a pretty decent away record this season in terms of getting victories. I think away from home this season, not as good as in previous campaigns, but it's 6 or 7 victories on the road. That's not too bad at all. Ollie Watkins not scoring the goals he once was, but I think that he looked dangerous last week. I think that Marco Asensio has fallen off it a little bit, but he's still a very top quality player for a game like this. Might be a game that really suits Morgan Rogers, powering through the Bournemouth midfield. And I just think there's more on the line for Villa than maybe Bournemouth. And I think that we've seen Bournemouth wobble in recent weeks when things have gone in their favour. So I'll take Villa to win at 2.76. I think it'll be a tight game. And I'm really enjoying these bets at the moment. Villa to win by exactly 1 goal comes in at 5. And again, if you look at those recent performances from both of these teams, especially Bournemouth, everything is very narrow. 1-2, 1-1, 0-0, 1-0, 2-2. Very narrow games. Last week, Aston Villa, 1-0 victory over Fulham, 2-1 loss against Man City previously in the league. The games have been tight, so I think there'll be 1 goal in it. I would shade for Villa. You can also take Bournemouth if you prefer. The odds are slightly better. I do think both teams will score. Screams 2-1 to me. Villa and both teams to score is 4.5. And then you look at 2 individual goal scorers who are absolutely outstanding. Evan-Neilson anytime at 2.88. Watkins anytime at 2.75. If you take your preferred scorer, bang that with a score. That'll bring you to about 4. That's nice.
Well, also Lev is going 2-1 either way. He says both teams to score absolutely. Also the draw 1-1. Don't discard the draw. Correct score for Moyoma. 2-2. You mentioned Huijsen. I really love seeing him at Real Madrid. So Florentino, prepare the money. Go to the bank and place your bets.
Bit early for that. I'd give it at least 2 more years. It's too early. It wasn't great last week.
But we need a central defender, that's for sure. Well, let's talk about the Premier League. There are 5 good games, actually. On Sunday, first one, and probably the best one, is Newcastle-Chelsea. The best one because, of course, they are both fighting for the Champions League spots. Level on points, 63, 2 more than the Nottingham Forest. Newcastle, they drew with Brighton after beating Ipswich, and next they have Arsenal and Everton. Chelsea, I guess they are not focused in the conference at all against Kew Gardens. They are going to play the final, but they beat Liverpool and Everton in the last 2 games. Their final schedule is very tough, actually. They're playing Man United and Nottingham Forest, and we know that they struggle when they travel, Tom.
Yeah, they do. The home form for Chelsea has been amazing this season, but away from home, look, it's not been awful for them. I think 7 wins, 6 defeats, but second half of the season, they've really struggled on the road. If we just went from like January, they'd be in the bottom 6 in terms of away teams in the Premier League. Look, let's start with Newcastle. I think that there's been a real jump up in the quality of their performance across the last 3 months. You take the game against Villa away, because Villa was so sensational in that match. Lots of goals scored. Defensively more solid. They're bringing Sven Botman back into things. I think he's going to be on the bench again for this game, but he's looked better. Fabian Schär has been great. I think Livramento, not been as good as Hall on the left-hand side, but has really settled into left back and knows what he's meant to do and where he's meant to be more than he did a few weeks ago. The loss of Joe Linton has been massive. And they've lost that real power in midfield that's required. Joe Willock has not quite brought that. He isn't that player. Doesn't sell himself as that player. So if it were me, I'd probably have someone like 𝐿𝐵𝐼 in midfield as opposed to Willock. We'll see what Eddie Howe does. But offensively, Gordon, Isak, Barnes, still Murphy, even Callum Wilson had a great effort last week against Brighton that was well saved. He's now doing that thing he was doing previously, coming on last 10, seeing out games. Did it great in the cup final. Did it great in a different way against Brighton last week. So they've got depth, they've got strength, they've got balance, and a lot to play for. And 4 defeats at home this season is quite surprising for Newcastle. They had that sort of big dip over January, February time. But I think that overall the home form has been good. Recently, home form is good. Look at the last 3 home games. 3-0 win, 5-0 win, 4-1 win. I'd be quite concerned if I were Chelsea here. Great win against Liverpool last week. I kind of thought we wouldn't have a Liverpool hangover. So this was the game I got most significantly wrong last week. My apologies. I kind of thought Liverpool wouldn't be like hungover. Not literally, but like figuratively. But there was a hangover from winning the league the previous week. Arne Slot said the drop-off was massive, and Chelsea took advantage of that. Great to see Cole Palmer scoring again. I think his overall game was really very impressive last week. I think Nicholas Jackson, I feel like we said Jackson and Palmer every show for like 20 weeks and then stopped mentioning them because they just stopped contributing in the way they were. So great to see them both back in again because there's obviously a great connection there at Chelsea. And I think having Romeo Lavia, allowing Caicedo to go back to right back, allowing Enzo Fernandez to have a bit more of a less hard-working, chugging up and down kind of game that he does when he's next to Caicedo, because Lavia is so tough to get off the ball. If that 3 had been fit all season, maybe they'd be higher in the table, Chelsea. So, look, there are positives there, but I do think defensively they are still massively suspect. I think the club think Wesley Fofana is their best centre-half, but you've got to move on now from Wesley Fofana. He's always injured. His body's not going to make it at the very top level. And Chalobah has probably come back in and been the best defender. Not particularly ringing endorsement. They let him go on loan to Palace in August because he was so lowly rated. Levi Colwell's got an error in him. And I think Caicedo is great in terms of building out the midfield when they have possession. Defensively, I'd have concerns, which Liverpool didn't exploit enough last week. And if Neto is the man running back to help him, I don't think there's going to be a great deal of defensive cover. So really tricky game, this one. But I think you have to go on the Newcastle home form and their desire to cement themselves in the top 5, which this would do. The gap would be 3 points with 2 games to play. And I think this would favour them. So take Newcastle to win at 2.16. Look at Isak, anytime goal scorer, as ever. That's pretty low odds at 2, but add that to a score, and you think you'll make some money there. Newcastle win, both teams to score, 3.25. I think they're 2 of the better scorers in the Premier League this season. 66 goals for Newcastle and 62 for Chelsea. And we saw Palmer and Jackson last week, so I think they'll score at least 1. And again, lovely group bet here. 2-1, 3-1, 4-1 brings you in at 5. So Newcastle with goals.
Screams goals. Levy is telling us Omojoma Newcastle to win and over 1.5 goals. Correct score 2-1. Great game. This one, Newcastle Chelsea. Probably will see one of these teams, maybe both of them, next season in the Champions League. Next game is Man United West Ham. Perhaps we also see Man United next season in the Champions League as the Europa League winner. They are just one step forward away from qualifying to this final in Bilbao, playing on Thursday. And they are not paying attention at all to the Premier League, so it's not good to bet on them. But, Tom, it's also impossible to bet on West Ham. They are unable to win a football game. It's 8 winless games in the Premier League. For Man United, is 6.
If it was possible to bet on both teams to lose, I would bet on both teams to lose. Like, I cannot understand how these 2 teams are still playing Premier League football this season. They are both so absolutely desperate to play no more games in this division until August. And frankly, they're both lucky to be playing games in this division next year because in another season with a better bottom 3, they'd both be in massive trouble. Tough to analyse Man United right now because we're recording this before they've played the game in the Europa League. I expect them to have won, but I expect them to have been pushed real hard by Athletic Club, who were the better team for long spells of the game last week before the sending off, which I think was the right decision, and the kind of collapse at the end of the first half. So I expect it to have been a real tough one for Manchester United, but I expect them to have come through. And that leads me to question who is going to play. The team against Brentford last week was a lot more weakened than even I had expected. 𝐿𝐿𝐴 looks just well out of it. And to come in and play that game last week was a tough one for him. But there was also 𝐷𝗵𝗿𝗄 up front, and Harry Amas and Fredrickson in the back line. Look, got lots of injuries, Man United, sure. But that was a real youth team they played in that game. I don't think they'll do the same thing here. I think it'll be reasonably strong, depending on injuries from the game previous. I expect Bruno Fernandes to play unless injured. I expect there to be 𝐿𝐴 and one or two other of the senior players to play. Again, depends on who's seriously injured from midweek, but I think it'll be stronger than last week. In terms of West Ham, I mean, the performance last week, I went to the game against Tottenham last week. I don't know why I do these things. And I thought that actually at spells, they were okay. Like, they're not good at the moment, and the deficiencies we discussed at length on this program, it's not Graham Potter's team. The front three don't quite work together. Mohamed Kudus is just being kept fit to sell in the summer. They're hoping to get up to £100 million for him. On form, you wouldn't touch him. On ability, you would. I think he needs to go to a club where he's not relied upon. Like, West Ham tried to rely on Mohamed Kudus this season. He does not have the personality, it would seem, to do that. But I think if he was your first sub in the 60th minute to come in a game where you're winning 1-0 or it's 1-1, he might be a good addition to your team. So I think he's in the wrong team at the wrong time, and also in the wrong position. He wants to play on the right. That's where 𝐵𝗵𝗿𝗄 plays, who is a club legend and the captain and the best player and the top scorer. He was never going to play in that position for West Ham. So that's been a mess offensively. And the midfield, like, Graham Potter at this point doesn't know what to do. I mean, he looks at all these players and he's like, one week it's Soler and Ward-Prowse. Next week it's Souček and Paquetá. Next week it's another combination of players. Like, he doesn't know what his best midfield is. These are not his midfielders, the kind of people that he wants. And I think with what Graham Potter wants to do, the central midfield positions may be the most important positions that he's got. So lots of sales to go in the summer. If it were up to me, beyond Thomas Souček, 𝐵𝗵𝗿 and Aaron Wan-Bissaka, every single player at West Ham is up for sale. And I think that's probably true as well. And also it's worth noting, Max Kilman's atrocious, really bad defender. 46 million English pounds they spent on Max Kilman from Wolves last week. A double howler to allow Tottenham to score. Todibo is overweight and can't defend. Aaron Cresswell was the best defender last week, a 36-year-old former left-back who's been at the club for a decade. Tells you everything you need to know. So I think the sheer amount of misery around West Ham makes it impossible for me to bet on them. So first up, take the Man U win at 2.07. I love the draw at 3.82. It screams 0-0 or 1-1. And look at those scorelines. 1-1 is 6.5. Look at West Ham at the moment and their recent results. 1-1, 1-1, 2-2 of those recent matches. There's also a 1-1 draw for Man United in there. I think it'll just be a draw, and a rather pitiful one at that. If you want Man United, go low scoring. 1-0 is 8.5, but look at the under 2.5 market. And there's two outstanding players here. One is 𝐵𝗵𝗿𝗄. One is Bruno Fernandes. Take those at anytime scorers. Throw that in with your preferred score, and you'll make some money. But this will be a tough watch, and I'm not sure why you would do it.
Avoid this match, guys. Screams a board draw, so I guess everyone is excited about this game. Correct score 2-0. Just go to Old Trafford. It's going to be an amazing Sunday in Manchester, and actually is almost at the same time as El Clásico. So why watching El Clásico when you can watch Man United West Ham this season, eh? Why? Let's go to the next game. Tom, Nottingham Forest, Leicester, and here, of course, we should look at Nottingham Forest to win is only 1.4. I have to say that we put a bad effect on Nottingham Forest, because I remember us saying 4 or 5 weeks that they are going to play the Champions League next season. You told me it's going to happen. They are going to listen the Champions League music next season, and since then, Tom, losing or drawing, like the draw against Crystal Palace, lost to Brentford. Is only 4 points in the last 5 Premier League games for
Yeah.
Nottingham Forest.
I'm gutted for them. I really am gutted for them. I don't think they'll make it now, and I just didn't see these results coming. Like the Man City one, sure, in the cup, could have gone either way, but to lose against Brentford, the way they lost against Everton, I think that Everton loss was catastrophic for Forest season because they'd had a wobble before the Everton loss, and like what's happened is everyone is now sitting 20 yards deeper with Forest. It happens all the time when a middle of the road, middle ranking club overperforms. The reason they've done it is they've often found a kind of breakaway style. West Ham have done it in recent years. Leicester have done it in recent years. Newcastle have done it in recent years. You can counter punch against teams who expect little from you, and you can get right up the table. Everyone now is treating Nottingham Forest with the respect their league position deserves. And even the bookies are. Look, 1.39 for a Forest win. Don't matter if against Leicester. That's a Man City almost odds for Forest to win. So that's the respect they've deserved this season. But people are dropping off. And when you drop off, they don't have the players to break down, get in behind because there's no space in behind. It's a whole different game. And it's why teams, sort of like West Ham again, and even Man United have struggled in games this season because you don't have the players to break down a low block. Do low block against Forest, you might get something from it, and the game might be unwatchable. So huge credit to Brentford for doing that. Huge credit to Crystal Palace and Everton for doing that as well. The good news for Forest is that Leicester ain't going to do that. They won last week against Southampton, and I'm delighted for those Ipswich fans, Leicester fans who have been going for months and months and months and not seeing their team score a goal. They did score 2 against Southampton. I thought it might be 1, but it was 2. They've got the second, and they got to have some fun. But I think normal service is resumed for this game. I think that Leicester are not able to low block effectively. Their away form this season suggests how poor they have been. And I think you've got to look at a Forest victory here. So take the Forest win at 1.39. I cannot see Leicester scoring a goal. Forest, one of the best defenses in the Premier League this season with 42 goals conceded. So it's about 1.3, 1.4 a game, maybe less than that. So take them to win to 0. Can't see Leicester scoring. Going back to the old ways, that's 2.1. If you fancy Forest, why not look at the handicap market here? Because I think that they're going to need something from this game. Leicester have got an awful defense across the season. It's 76 conceded. So Forest at minus 2.5 is 3.75. That's really good. And then again, pick a couple of goal scorers. Chris Wood, top scorer in the Premier League this season, anytime. Alanga anytime. Throw them in with a Forest win. That'll double your money.
Correct score 2-0 for 𝐬𝐭𝐚𝐲. Forest, one more win under 2.5 goals. Could be an option for this game. Man United, this is Nottingham Forest, then is Tottenham. I was thinking already about the Europa League final between Man United and Tottenham. Tottenham focus in this Europa League game in Norway against 𝗵𝗲𝗀, but later on they have the game against Crystal Palace. They drew with West Ham. They haven't won 24 games this season in the Premier League. Their season is just pitiful, apart from the Europa League, of course. And Crystal Palace also thinking about the FA Cup final next week, but getting better results in the Premier League lately. It looks like they are going to finish again in this 12th spot that they have taken for granted in the recent years.
Yeah, of course they're going to finish 12th. The stars will align. They'll find a way. Look, Tottenham are tricky here because, again, we're recording this before the game against 𝗵𝗲𝗀, and I think they've got through. I think you're right. I think Europa League is going to be Man United-Tottenham. However, that late goal in that game, there was a spanner in the works. I think it's why they changed so many players for the West Ham game last week. And I think that, like, if they have lost to 𝗵𝗲𝗀, which I don't think they have, if they have, I don't think 𝐿𝐴 Postecoglou is in charge of this game because I think he gets sacked on the spot. Because Spurs season, like Man United season, yeah, but Spurs season is on a knife edge. It is so close to being the best season in Tottenham's last 30 years, 20 years, or the worst season in the last 20 years. Because if they win the Europa League, if they finish 17th or 16th, no one is going to give a toss. No one's going to care. It isn't going to matter. And all this conversation about Postecoglou's future and the football and the losses and the 24 games without a win you mentioned, no one's going to care. And they shouldn't, because they're in the Champions League and they won their first trophy since 2008. That's the story now. So it's all on that game. If they're through, let's assume they are. I think this team will be stronger than it was against West Ham last week, where they changed basically everybody. I'd expect 𝗀𝗄𝐿. I'd expect 𝗵𝗏𝗀, drop Richarlison, who's offered nothing during his time at Tottenham. I'd expect Van de Ven and Romero to play, who both didn't play last week against West Ham. And that puts them in a pretty strong position to win this game. Trouble is, their home form, even with all those players, has been diabolical this season. And Crystal Palace are very tough to beat right now. Front three outstanding. 𝐬𝐻𝐧𝐧𝐞𝐿 is in excellent form at this moment in time. Jean-Philippe Mateta, 14 goals in the Premier League. Impressive. 𝐿𝐴𝐿 Sarr has been in good form as well. Doubts again about Adam Wharton, who's becoming a bit of a crock for Palace. If he is unavailable, they lose the kind of control midfield they would have had. But even without him, great tenacity in midfield. Probably someone like Will Hughes will come in. And defence has been really good as well. The back three of Richards, Gueye, and Lacroix. So I just think they're built to not lose at this moment in time. So definitely do not bet on Palace to lose. So potentially a draw at 3.77, depending on the Tottenham team. Palace have drawn 3 of their last 4. But for me, shade for Crystal Palace at 2.6. They have goal scorers. They have a better defence. And they haven't got a game in Norway on Thursday. And that is irresistible at 2.6. And again, look at 2-1. I expect Tottenham to score, but I expect Palace, if they've conceded one, to go on to win it. 2-1 is 10. That's worth a little flutter of somebody's money. You can find ways to cover that a bit by, minus 3.5 or both teams to score, whatever. But I think Palace are going to win this game 2-1, and up and down it's 10.
Well, indeed, I said Tottenham are in the final, but be careful. We have a Europa League video in this channel, and I actually said that I still remember how they were kicked out by Dinamo Zagreb some years ago when they got a 3-0 result in the first leg, and then they lost it in the second leg. So they are going to put all the effort, I hope, on Thursday in the pitch, perhaps they are tired or not taking this game as seriously as they should. And the last game is Liverpool-Arsenal. This should have been a great game perhaps some weeks ago, but now, of course, really decaf, and Arsenal probably proud of themselves because of the Champions League they've made, as you said at the beginning, but also regretting not taking their chances at the Parc des Princes, especially in the first 10 minutes. But anyway, glory to them. They've done a great Champions League. They are going to finish again second in this Premier League. And for Liverpool, I guess every home game is just a way to celebrate their Premier League title. Away is another thing, but I don't think they are going to relax when they are playing at Anfield.
No, and I think Arne Slot last week was not happy with the performance against Chelsea, wasn't happy with the effort, wasn't happy with the 75% they played at for much of the game, and he won't want to go on a losing streak to end this season, because when the season is over and we look at the table, we think about the Invincibles, we think about just 2 defeats across the campaign, we think about the successes across the campaign, and 3 or 4 defeats at the end of the season would really make it look not less impressive because you're champions, you don't care, but in the history books, I think you do want it to be like, and they only lost 3 games. What a team that was. If it gets to 5, gets to 6, I think you might be a bit like, it might feed the narrative that we're all having right now about how good a champion this Liverpool team are. And if you ranked, a friend of mine did a piece recently for The Athletic about the best champions in Premier League history across the 32 seasons, and this team were like 26th. Because they've been fine. They've been fine. But there's been no excitement or entertainment or title battle or, nothing particularly spectacular about them, but also not era defining like the City boring titles were. So, that's something they're going to try and avoid. And I do think that matters to Arne Slot, and it will matter to Liverpool, and they won't want to lose more than the 3 games they've lost this season. So I expect Alexander-Arnold to start and get maybe a jeery sort of reception from some of Anfield, the silly people who don't realise that he's been there for 20 years and would like a new experience in the last 5 years of his career. And he's got offered the chance to be Real Madrid's right back. I mean, he's done everything there is to do at Liverpool. Just shake hands and say thank you for your service. I don't really get the thing about Alexander-Arnold. He would have been on a massive contract at Liverpool if he'd have signed it. It wasn't about that. It was about a new challenge and the chance to play for Real Madrid. I don't necessarily buy into every player wants to play for Real Madrid, but I do think if the option comes and you've got nothing left to do where you are, I don't know why he wouldn't do it. And all this, oh, we didn't get a transfer fee. Spare me. So, like, I think he'll play. I think the back four are all fit. I think the first choice midfield's all fit. I don't think he messes around anymore with Darwin Núñez, who's not good enough to play for Liverpool. So I think strongest possible team. And I think there's every chance they go on to win this game. In terms of Arsenal, we've done quite a lot of it already. You know, here's a stark stat for you, which tells you why they're not going to win the league and why they're not going to win the Champions League. Salah, top scorer for Liverpool, 28 goals. Top scorer for Arsenal, Kai Havertz with 9. That's why they're not champions. That's why they couldn't beat Paris Saint-Germain. Defense was fine. Midfield was fine. Tactics were fine. Desire was fine. Quality was fine. All of it. They didn't have the goal scorer. They didn't have the difference maker. They didn't have the Salah. Didn't have the Haaland. Didn't have the Isak. Didn't have the 𝐿𝐭𝐸𝐲. Didn't have the Mbappe. Didn't have the blah, 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 right? That's what they need. Get that, and they're going to do it. Next season, they will win the league if they do that move. I'm convinced of it. If they don't, they will do this all over again. So I expect a high-energy game, and I expect there to be plenty of desire to win it. I'll just show you for Liverpool at 210. Both teams to score on its own is 1.57. Double them up, you'll double your money. I also like a couple of other bets here. Firstly, Arsenal leading after 10 minutes is 9.5. I'm always looking around for Liverpool to win from behind because it's happened so many times this season. But that on its own, Arsenal scoring in the opening 10, 9.5 and not conceding. It's happened, I think, 6 or 7 times this season. I think Arsenal will come out the traps here and Liverpool will respond. That was 9.5. Liverpool, both teams to score was 4. But also, don't discount the draw on its own is 3.65. 0-0 or 1-1 at 4.5. I liked. I get the point on Arsenal being shattered, but I think look at Villa last week against Paris Saint-Germain or a couple of weeks ago. I think there'll be a big reaction. They will want to put in a big performance here at Anfield, and I think they'll start well, they'll fade, and Liverpool win late.
Well, we are seeing a lot of comments saying that Arsenal will lose here at Anfield after the KO in the Champions League, but it's not how Tom sees things. Well, this is it for this Premier League match day 36. So, guys, of course, you still have the chance to win some money with Oddspedia. Just register, sign up, and you can play in our tipster competitions. You can win up to 1,000 euros. There you go. We have our Premier League tipster competition. And also we have rivals where you can create your own tipster competition and play with your friends or with your colleagues or with people that you don't like. So it's absolutely up to you who you play with. Tom, let's finish the video. Safe bet.
Safe bet this week is Man City to win, but the odds are no good. So go for a minus 1.5 handicap for a Man City win at Southampton. Comes in at 1.53.
And the ACCA?
A 3-tier ACCA for you. Man City will beat Southampton. Throwing Brentford to win at Ipswich, who are already relegated. And the risk in the portfolio is Villa to win at Bournemouth. If that comes in, 4.81 is very tidy.
Well, guys, this is it. Only 3 games left in the Premier League. Only 3 times we have to watch Tom Rennie live with you in this show. So let's say goodbye. Goodbye.